Question. What makes people say
this car is here to stay? I always say like this is going to the kids.
That's it. Yep.
Like that's gonna be for my children. Like I'm not selling this car.
And I absolutely need to find one for myself somehow now. I need one of these cars in my life.
Oh my god, I'm never selling this car. This car's staying forever. And I promise you guys, I am not getting rid of this car.
And I, of course, am never gonna sell this either. However, what I want to do today is describe what makes people say I'm never gonna sell this car and give you 5 reasons why you should consider buying one while you can. So sit down, strap in, hang on. We're about to talk about 5 reasons why you should get your paws all over one of these 2012 C63 Black Series. I love this car. Let's get started. Guys, you cannot talk about this car without talking about the engine. This engine is wildly significant to the Black Series and AMG as a whole. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but AMG was a subsidiary brand of Mercedes all throughout the 90s. There have been many AMG cars, C55, C36, you know, the original Hammer. There have been so many cars, but they weren't actually paired officially with Daimler, the parent company of Mercedes, until 2005. And that's wildly significant because until that point, what Mercedes would do is they would make their C-Class, or they would make their E-Class, or they'd make something, and then they would give it to AMG and say, do your best with it. This is the engine that it's got, this is the suspension it's got, whatever you can do is whatever you can do, and we're proud of you. But that all changed in 2005, right before the development of this engine. You see, Mercedes bought the remaining shares of AMG, so they finally got in bed together. And that meant that AMG finally had a chair at the dinner table. And that's wildly important because until that point, like I said, they never got to build an engine. So what did AMG do with this newfound autonomy? I'll tell you what, they built a freaking race engine. This race engine is 6.2 liter naturally aspirated V8. This thing is incredible. Guys, this engine had a closed deck design so it could handle immense amount of pressure and power. It had an aluminum block, so it was extremely lightweight. It had 6.2 liters of displacement, so it had tons of torque. In 2012, this thing came out with 510 horsepower. And yes, I know, by today's standards, that doesn't sound like a whole lot, but if you really think about it, in 2012, this thing making 510 horsepower is insane. The mighty Corvette Z06 with its 7-liter engine only made 505 horsepower. This thing had a liter less of displacement and still made more power than that thing. Guys, we can't talk about this engine, the M156 and the C63 Black Series, and not talk about the mighty M159 that's in the SLS Black Series. That engine is basically the same internals. It's got the same forged pistons, connecting rods, and all that stuff. The main difference is actually the intake. The lunatics at AMG were able to push that M159 in the Black Series of the SLS to 622 horsepower out of a naturally aspirated V8. To my knowledge, that is the most powerful production V8 in the world, which is insane. I mean, especially if you think about the McLaren F1, you know, the hypercar of the 90s, the, you know, absolute astonishment of work. That car made 3 horsepower less than the SLS Black Series V8. And that mighty F1 actually had 12 cylinders, whereas this only has 8 cylinders. So it's a mighty, mighty feat of engineering, especially when you consider that the SLS M159 revved to 8,200 RPM, which is incredible for something as big as 6.2 liters. And that is why, honestly guys, this engine is a complete work of art. But don't just take my word for it. When this thing was developed in 2008, this engine, when it finally came to light, it won Engine of the Year in 2009 and 2010. And if that's not enough, Mercedes, with their GT3 Cup cars, in 2020, they're gonna be using this the M156 engine in their 2020 GT3 car. And that's because this thing was just built from the ground up to be a race engine. And it feels like that. Every time you get behind the wheel and you start driving it and really pushing this car, it feels like a racing engine and it pushes you. It kind of goats you to go harder. And that's why I just love it. That's the first thing we're gonna talk about. Let's move on to number 2. Guys, number 2 on this list is Exclusiveity. Now, they only made 800 of these 2012 C63 Black Series, but more importantly, only 77 were brought to the United States. And it's reported that about 10 of those cars were immediately shipped off to the United Arab Emirates. So theoretically, we have about 67 of these cars in the United States. And that makes things a little bit difficult because if you want to bless your cheeks in those seats, you're gonna have to find one of these 67 cars here. There's just one major problem with that. And I've already shown it to you. Let's roll the clip.
This car is here to stay. I always say like this is going to the kids.
That's it. Yep.
Like that's going to be for my children. Like I'm not.
And I absolutely need to find one for myself somehow now. I need one of these cars in my life.
Oh my god, I'm never selling this car. This car's staying forever. And I promise you guys, I am not getting rid of this car.
Guys, no one wants to sell this car. And I think I know why. I truthfully believe that it's not because of the value proposition. Yes, I think these will go up in value. And yes, I think that this is going to be an amazing long-term car, but I think people don't want to sell it because of the way it makes you feel. This car, I'm not an angry person, but when I drive this, it makes me feel angry. I don't know how to explain it. This car, as you drive it, it feels like it just wants to pick a fight with every other car on the road. It's hilarious. And it honestly, it kind of goes like this. You know, people ask me, what was it like to drive this car? What was it like to drive that car? And for my BMWs, I always say that car exudes confidence. It makes you feel like a better driver. And it feels like a football coach or something. It feels like that coach just is always making you do drills. Like it's honing you to, you know, perfect your craft type of thing. And this car, when people ask me what it's like to drive, I tell them the same thing. I say it's like a football coach, but instead of doing drills 24/7, it just feels like the football coach gave their players a bunch of steroids. It feels like they just took some steroids and they pumped it right in this massive fender flare and they just made it angry. And that's what I love about this car. It's just such an angry, unique experience and it feels like a DTM race car on the road. And for that reason, I just love it. And that's also why I think it's remained such an exclusive, nice car. And if you go on Auto Trader right now, you might find one, maybe two for sale here in America. Anyways, that's exclusivity. Let's move on to number 3. For number 3, we are gonna talk about, of course, the way that this thing looks. It just looks incredible. I mean, let's come here first. Look at these front fender flares. These are 2.2 inches wider than the standard, already large C63. And if you come around to the back fender flares, we're looking at 3.3 inches wider. This thing honestly looks as close to a DTM race car as you can get. And let's start from the front real quick, talk about some things. If you look, you will see, of course, the all carbon fiber front splitter. Behind that, a couple radiators, and one top tip, guys, if you're looking at a Black Series and you want to know if it has the track pack, let's focus your attention on this right front mesh over here. If it has these kind of slats, I don't know if you can see those, but if it has these kind of slats all the way through it, then that's a dead giveaway that this car actually, yes, does have the upgraded radiators and track pack. That track pack comes with extra cooling for radiators, trans cooling, also comes with differential cooling. Now, from the front, how can you ignore these dive planes? They just look incredible. I mean, I don't know what you guys call them. You can call them dive planes, flicks, canards. They look insane though. It really adds to the effect of this car. When you combine that with these front nostrils up top, it gives a sense of aggression when this thing pulls up behind you as you're driving down the motorway. If we continue on down the side here, you of course see the carbon fiber mirror caps. And one thing that is not always apparent when you look at these in picture is it's got this beautiful carbon fiber side skirt that runs all the way down the length of it. There's one aftermarket thing that's visually noticeable out here on the side, and it's these wheels. These are HRE wheels. They still retain that kind of OEM plus look because the factory wheels do look pretty similar to this. Awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. I just love the way that those look. And if we come around back, it's hard to miss this, especially when you're pulling out of your garage. This massive spoiler, it looks so cool. Yes, I feel like a child, but I just freaking love it. It looks so awesome. If we come on down here, this is a single piece of carbon fiber. It's a massive diffuser. It has these chicken wire or mesh, whatever you want to call it. And if you look close enough, you can actually see the differential cooler underneath. I'm gonna see if I can prop you guys up to look at it. See that? It's a large external fan underneath the car that shows the differential cooling for the track pack. This obviously has tinted taillights, but man, this thing just looks so aggressive. So for that reason, guys, that is number 3. Let's move on to number 4. All right, guys, number 4 on the list is the brakes. These brakes are so powerful. Put it this way, if you had an unsuspecting passenger in the car and you just slam on the brakes, there's a very good chance you guys will wind up at the chiropractor to fix your passenger's neck. These are that powerful. They're so powerful, in fact, that I actually wanted to see how this car's braking capability would compare to other cars from this same era, and I came across a Motor Trend article that listed out the top 20 best braking performance cars that they had tested. And guess what? This car was on there. It ranked number 10. But I did see something pretty interesting. The 9 cars that beat this, only one of them came out at the same time or ahead of this Black Series. So if you really think about it, when this car came out, there was only one car that was better at braking, at least by the Motor Trend testing standards, and it was the Lexus LFA, a freaking supercar. The fact that AMG took this C-Class coupe and made it brake that well is honestly insane. And I can feel it. Every time I stomp on the anchors, this thing honestly rips. It stops so freaking fast. But guys, don't just take my word for it. Take a listen to Johnny Lieberman as he described the braking capability of this car in the 2012 Motor Trend Best Driving Car Awards.
Yeah, oh, and the brakes. I mean, you've heard the expression, a car is only as good as its brakes. Well, this is the best car in the world based on that metric. Right, I mean, yeah, absolutely incredible.
To be honest with you, I agree with Johnny. I think these brakes are just insane. And when you drive a Black Series, you're gonna have to give them a test for me, but warn your passenger first. All right, let's move on to number 5. Number 5 on this list is actually gonna be the legacy of this car. If you ever mention C63 to any car enthusiast, the first thing that they think of is a stonking big V8 engine in a small car and a very happy driver. However, what if I told you that in the next 10 years, all of that might change? You see, the next generation of C63 is going to have a 4-cylinder engine, which completely changes the recipe that we've enjoyed since 2008. And considering that the current generation, the W205 version of the C63, never got a Black Series designation, when people come back and look at the highlights of the C63, they're gonna come to this car, the C63 Black Series, because it has the best version of that 6.2 liter naturally aspirated engine. It's got the Black Series treatment and the rarity of it. So guys, I believe that going forward, when people start looking back and trying to decide which Mercedes they want to buy, I honestly think that this car, the C63 Black Series, is going to be one of the most sought after cars in the next couple decades, especially with everything moving to fully electric. This is going to stand out, and it's going to be a true hallmark for any car enthusiast to own and to drive. And that's why ultimately I think that it's a great buy going forward, and it deserves a spot on this list as number 5. Well, anyways guys, that's gonna do it for me. I really hope that you guys have enjoyed this video. You know I love this car. You know that it's my favorite car under $100,000, and I plan to keep this thing forever. If you have any more questions or if you've enjoyed this video, please remember to like and subscribe. I always appreciate that, and have a great day. See you guys.
Okay.